Okay, another type of graph. The bar graph. We use the bar graph in the same way we use the circle graph, okay? Where we want to display discrete data. Except the bar graph allows us to use more categories if there are more categories. With circle graphs, we talked about one of the disadvantages yesterday, that if there's too many categories, the circle graph is very difficult to read because there's too many slices, right? Bar graph makes that better, improves upon that. So as the name implies, it's a series of bars where the horizontal axis, which we call the qualitative axis, okay, represents the categories, whatever the situation is. And the vertical axis, because it's numbers, it's the quantitative axis, represents the number for each category. So in this case, we've got Valentine's Day gifts. The categories that they received are discrete. So roses, chocolates, teddy bears, etc. And then we had another category just called other. And then you see the number of people who received them, I think. Yeah, we can say that. Bar graphs can be horizontal, okay? This is the same information, except we've flipped the axes. So obviously the first one, we call it a vertical bar graph because the bars are vertical. This one we call a horizontal one. I really try to stay away from these. I find these ones harder to read than the vertical ones. I find the vertical ones much easier to read. Okay, so how do we make one of these things? Pretty straightforward. So in Excel, we're going to make a new document. And we are going to make a bar graph that represents the 6 most spoken Aboriginal languages in Canada. And you can see them there, and you can see the number of people that speak the corresponding language. So we could have done this in a circle graph. 6 slices might have been a little bit tight, messy looking, okay? Maybe you can get away with it, but bar graph would be nice for this. So in your Microsoft Excel document, like we did with the circle graph, you basically enter the data like you see it there. In column A on your Excel document, type in the names of the languages, and in column B beside it, type in the corresponding numbers of people that speak that language. So that you've got, I'll just skip ahead here, you've got this. Okay. Once you've got that, like here, I've just set it up myself here. You want to highlight all of them. And remember, we want to go find our graphs, so we go to Insert. This time, it's at the top left, about in the middle of the page, under Bar Graph, or it'll say Bar Chart. So if you click on that, select the first one you see under 2D column. And once you... No, that's fine. Be creative. So once you do that and select the most basic, yeah, the ones I do are the most basic ones. If you want to spruce it up, absolutely. Are we all here? Are we okay? Okay, so like we did with the circle graph, click on the chart title and make an appropriate name for it. Indigenous languages spoken, Aboriginal languages spoken, whatever you want to call it. What did I call it? Populations of the 6 most common Aboriginal languages. So populations of the 6 most common Aboriginal languages. And notice that if it's a big title, if it's a lengthy title, it'll push your bar graph down a little bit, which is fine. What did I do first? Did I change the? Did I do the axes first, or did I change the scale first? Yeah. So this looks okay. Only thing that I really don't like about it is that the vertical axis looks a little condensed, all the numbers in there. Maybe I don't want to show as many numbers. So to get around that, so let's say instead of showing every 5,000, I'm going to show every 10,000. Because that way it'll look a little bit cleaner. We're going to click on the vertical numbers, right click, and we're going to go to Format Axis. The window that opens up on the left, you'll see it says bounds and units. Go to major units and change from 5,000 to 10,000. That means it's going to show every 10,000 one, not five. It's not going to show every 5,000 one. It'll just make it look a little bit cleaner. So instead of having a bunch of numbers there, you'll see that it's every 10,000. Makes it look, like I said, a little cleaner. Oh, you're doing vertical?
No, it's not showing the vertical.
Those aren't being entered as numbers. Because normally, like, good question. Try entering it again. Oh, don't use the spaces. Yeah, that'll do it. Oh, you have to, if you haven't, I said, are you guys okay? And if you're not, I'm going to tell me, no, I'm not okay. Yes, that's probably if you're having problems at the start. I know I'm just in the habit of putting spaces, but we can't put them in because it's got to read them as numbers in order to create the bar graph. Okay, are we all here? You're here? Where are you at?
Well, I have to redo it.
You have to redo it now.
But like that.
Okay. Well, we only have one more thing left to do. And we want label for a bar graph, we want labels for the horizontal axis or the qualitative axis, and we want label for the vertical axis. So the quantitative, so to get the labels, as long as your bar graph is selected, go to the upper left, add chart element. Under there, the second one down, axis titles. Then it'll be the horizontal and the vertical. Do each one separately. So if you click horizontal, it'll give you a spot where you can enter the horizontal label. So if I do primary horizontal, see a little axis title appears at the bottom, and I'm just going to put language. And then I'm going to go back up to add chart element again, and this time do the vertical. I'll just put number of people. And that's basically it. Again, you can go fancy if you want. You can see as long as the bar graph is selected at the top, you can do things like change colors if you want. So it changes the color of the bars. You can, and then it gives you a whole bunch of different types that you can select. Okay. I mean, see, that one looks pretty good too. That's a nice looking one. We good? If we are, please save it to that folder I asked you to create. Save it as this, 2.2 bar graph. Save it, save it, save it, save it. In case I didn't tell you, save it.
You realize my mom can't see very clear, right?
Clearly, clearly, not clear, clearly.
Language is made up here.
You speak bad English? That's impossible. We okay here? Okay.
Yes, you got some points, 10 times.
Don't you mean 10 times more quick?
Go with the same articles are useless. You get your 20 crossed out.
I see. Okay, so that's it for the laptop for today. So let's go back to the exercise. I just want you to, sorry, the lesson, thank you. The reason this lesson is so long is because I've also given an example and instructions how to do a double bar graph using Microsoft Excel. So that's actually another advantage of bar graphs, is a lot of times we may take a bar graph and we want to split each bar, say, into male and females, right? So the language is spoken. Maybe we're interested in finding out how many males speak that language, how many females speak that language. So we could split that vertical bar up into 2 bars together. And then the next language would have 2 bars. Or say if you want to split up something into grades, instead of having a grade for all of senior school, you could have 4 bars, grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, because maybe you're interested, you know, do grade 12s prefer this category more or do grade 9s? So that's the event. Like you can go double bar graph, triple bar graph. That last example was 4 bar graphs within one. But we'll leave that one, I'll leave that with you. We've drawn some good bar graphs, or we drew a good bar graph today. Sometimes bar graphs are not drawn so well. And this is where you have to look critically at graphs, because a lot of times people will deliberately try to manipulate a graph to show something that they want to show. Okay? So here, this bar graph, let's look at a couple of examples. This is a bad graph. A bad bar graph. It's okay that it's horizontal. I mean, I'm not a fan of horizontal. Do you see anything that would make it bad, Caitlin? What about them? Like, right, when we make a scale, we want to go up by the same amount each notch. Otherwise, the bars could be deceptive. Okay? And this one, we see that it starts at 0, goes up by 14, goes up by 14, so pretty good. But then it goes up by 19, then it goes up by 4, and then it goes back up by 14 again, and then it goes up like by 30 or 41. It's very inconsistent, which means that these bars aren't accurate. Okay? So we would say for this one that the scale on the quantitative axis, where the numbers are, on the quantitative axis, are not consistent. Which makes it misleading. Makes the graph misleading. Because then it looks like, oh, well, you know, if I look at this bar graph, it kind of looks like what? Phys ed looks like it's about double French, except phys ed is 179, French is 47. That's not double. So if I look at the graph, that's something I could conclude, but that makes no sense because the scale is all wrong. Yeah.
The arrows on either axis, are those supposed to be?
I get why an arrow would be here. I'm not sure why an arrow would be there. Yeah. It could be just this is all they were able to do to construct it. I mean, technically, I wouldn't put arrows on bar graphs. I don't believe so. I believe it's the same one.
Favorite subjects by gender. I might be on the wrong one.
Are you on bad graph or bar graph number 1? Yeah, okay. Sorry, that should have said bad graph, not bar graph. Bad graph number 2. Students' favorite subjects again. Horizontal again. Not great. Why? Yeah, so the quantitative axis, there's not enough notches. There's only like one division. It goes from 0 to 100 and then to 200. So it makes some of these harder to read. Like we can only, a lot of bar graphs, we can only estimate the numbers. Some we can be a little bit more accurate, but this one we can only estimate. You know, so like this one here, math or art, because there's hardly any notches, it's a little harder to estimate how many. Okay, I mean, music would be easy to estimate because it goes to about 100. But the rest of them would be harder, like even phys ed. I mean, what, 200 is here? So we would say for this one, not enough divisions. On the quantitative axis. which makes the estimating the value of each bar more difficult. I'm going to stop there for now. So you should now be able to do exercise, or you should be able to do exercise 2.1 as well as exercise 2.2. But on your, there's a correction I got to make before you go. In exercise 2.2, question number 1. Exercise 2.2, question number 1. No, that's the wrong one. If you look at exercise 2.2, number 1, it's about a gift card, how much you spend. The only problem is I didn't tell you how much the gift card was worth on yours. So it's $50. That matches up with the answer key. So we will finish bar graphs on Tuesday. We'll be able to do histograms on Wednesday. Then I can give you that assignment on Wednesday, and then we can have it due earlier the next week and go from there.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.